The garage was always loud, engines coughing, metal clashing, men shouting over rock music and drills. But today it felt quieter. Or maybe it was just Nicholas Blake's head that had gone silent. He stood under the chassis of a rusting Ford truck, wrench in hand, sweat tracing lines through the grime on his face. The call had come that morning. 5 words delivered without emotion. She needs surgery, immediately. Laura was dying. Her kidneys had given out months ago. The insurance covered basic care, a dialysis machine twice a week, pills to keep the poison from rising too fast. But it wasn't enough. Her body was fading, her skin growing pale and waxy, her voice thinner with each passing day. The transplant waiting list was a joke, years long, and only for those who could afford to wait. Laura couldn't. Nicholas had tried everything. He sold his old motorcycle, his tools, maxed out credit cards, borrowed from friends and lied to his coworkers. But it wasn't close to enough. The surgery and aftercare would cost over $100,000. And every day she went without it, the risk climbed higher. That night, he called a man named Ruben from a number scrawled on the back of a napkin. "I want to sell a kidney," Nicholas said. There was silence on the line. "Are you sure?" Ruben asked. "It's not reversible." "I'm sure." The next week passed like a fever dream. Blood tests, x-rays, questions he didn't understand. No contracts, just nods. Everything was in cash. Ruben never used names. The donation was anonymous, the buyer foreign. Nicholas didn't ask. He went under the knife in a clinic an hour outside Houston. No hospital logos, no questions. When he woke up, one side of his body screamed with pain. But in his hand was an envelope. $50,000 in small bills. Half up front, the rest when he delivered proof that Laura was in surgery. Back in their apartment, Laura was asleep. Her breath came shallow, her skin cold. Nicholas sat beside her and cried for the first time in years. He didn't tell her the truth. Instead, he lied. Said an old friend from high school came into money and offered help. She didn't ask for details. She was too tired to fight anymore. When he handed the money over to the hospital clerk, she looked at him like he was a fool. People don't just find that kind of money. But she didn't ask questions either. Dr. Jonathan Wells came into their lives a few days later. Tall, clean-shaven, with a calm voice and surgical confidence. He explained the process carefully, patiently, his hand resting on Laura's wrist just a second longer than necessary. Nicholas didn't notice at first. He was focused on the numbers, the timeline, the logistics. The pain in his side was getting worse. He chalked it up to recovery. No time for rest. The surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Nicholas waited in this hallway, pacing like a shadow. The hours dragged. Finally, Wells stepped out, removed his mask, and smiled. "She made it," he said. "She's going to be okay." Nicholas collapsed into a chair, hands trembling. It was over. The worst was behind them. He could finally breathe. But he didn't see the way Laura looked at the doctor through the glass, not yet. Laura's recovery was slow but steady. Within days of the transplant, her color returned, her appetite crept back, and the quiet death inside her seemed to retreat. Nicholas sat at her bedside every evening after work, clutching her hand, whispering encouragements. She smiled, nodded, but something in her eyes was distant, distracted. Dr. Wells visited often, more often than most surgeons. He always came alone, never sending a nurse or assistant. He brought her books, teas, and even a tablet preloaded with documentaries about recovery. "Mental healing is just as important," he said once, brushing her hair back behind her ear. Nicholas noticed these moments, but dismissed them. Wells had saved her life. Gratitude explained the closeness. And Nicholas had no energy left for paranoia. His own recovery, on the other hand, was far from smooth. The pain in his side was constant, like a dull knife twisting just under the ribs. He couldn't lift anything heavier than a toolbox, and even that left him winded. At work, he faked strength, manned the front desk more, said he threw his back out helping someone move. Manny, his coworker, joked that he was turning soft. At home, bills kept piling up. Though the surgery had been paid for, medications, follow-ups, and rent pushed them deeper into the red. Laura was still too weak to work, and Nicholas couldn't pick up extra shifts. One night, he found himself staring at the last $20 in his wallet, wondering whether to buy groceries or gas. That same evening, Laura mentioned Wells again. She was glowing, recounting how he'd personally adjusted her medication plan to reduce her side effects. "He listens," she said. "Really listens. Not like other doctors." Nicholas forced a smile. That's great. He even said I'd make a good administrator, she added, her voice lighter than he'd heard in months. Like at the clinic, said I'm smart, organized, calm under pressure. Nicholas's stomach turned, though he wasn't sure why. You are all of those things, he said. She kissed his cheek, then went to bed early. He stayed up, staring at the muted television, replaying every word in his mind. A week later, at a follow-up appointment, Nicholas met Emily Jensen, nurse practitioner, 30-ish, quick smile, sharp eyes. She was kind but no nonsense, and when she saw Nicholas wince while rising from a waiting room chair, she leaned in. You recovering from something? She asked. He hesitated. Yeah, surgery. She looked at his chart. I don't see any notes on that. It wasn't through here. That caught her attention. Later, when Laura went in for her checkup, Emily pulled Nicholas aside. I know the signs, she said quietly. One kidney? Let me guess. It was for her. Nicholas froze. She didn't press, just said, You're not the first. Just be careful. Wells has a way of making people feel like they owe him. That night, Nicholas lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The room felt colder than usual, even though the heater clicked softly beneath the window. Laura had begun sleeping with her back turned. 2 days later, while dropping off parts at a nearby body shop, Nicholas ran into Jake, an old friend who now drove rideshare full-time. They grabbed lunch at a taco truck, and over greasy plates, Nicholas let slip the truth. I sold my kidney, he said, his voice flat. Jake blinked. Jesus. She needed it. I had no choice. Jake leaned in. Does she know? Nicholas shook his head. She thinks I borrowed the money. You're out here falling apart, and she's out with that doctor guy every other day. Nicholas stiffened. What do you mean? Jake shrugged. I drive nights, pick up all kinds of people. I've seen her get into his car twice. Same parking lot. Late. Nicholas stared at his plate. The tacos had gone cold. Back home, Laura was in the shower. Nicholas sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone on the nightstand. He didn't usually pry, but tonight, something in his gut twisted tight. He opened it. No passcode. Messages from Wells. Long ones, full of inside jokes, nicknames. You deserve better. Wish I could have been there with you. A photo of them in this hospital garden. Too close. His hand on her back. Nicholas felt the world shift under him. From the bathroom, the water stopped. He put the phone down, stood up, and stepped into the hallway. Everything okay? Laura called. Yeah, he lied, his voice calm. But inside, something had cracked. Nicholas did not confront Laura that night, or the next. The messages, the photo, the stolen intimacy, all of it burned in his mind like acid, but he kept quiet. What could he say? He had no proof of anything but tone, timing, and touches. Besides, the weight of the lie he himself had told, that the money came from a friend, not his own body, pressed against his chest like a stone. Instead, he watched. He noticed how Laura's voice grew livelier when she talked about Wells, how she dressed a little nicer on appointment days, how she mentioned the clinic more and him, her husband, less. She was changing, and so was he. Nicholas had never been a man prone to self-pity, but now, every movement reminded him of what he'd given up. The soreness in his side had become permanent, and his energy never truly returned. The doctor who'd bought his kidney had offered no follow-up, no guidance, no sympathy. Just cash in a white envelope and silence. One evening, Laura came home with a new haircut and a tablet from the clinic. Wells gave it to me, she said with a casual smile, for helping him organize patient files. He says I have a natural sense for workflow. Nicholas barely nodded. She looked at him. You okay? Tired, he muttered. You're always tired. That night he lay beside her but felt miles away. Emily Jensen became his only outlet. He didn't seek her out, not at first. But during a pharmacy pickup at the clinic, she caught him sitting alone on a bench near the parking lot, hunched over, pale. You don't look good, she said. Been a long week. She sat beside him, close but not too close. Listen, she said, lowering her voice. I know you think it's none of my business, but I've seen this before. Dr. Wells. He's not what he seems. Nicholas turned to her, eyes narrowed. He's a brilliant surgeon. she continued. But he knows it. He gets into patients' lives, especially women. Builds this dependency. Makes them feel seen, needed. Like he's the only one who understands them. It's not always romantic. But when it is... She let the sentence hang in the air. Nicholas looked away. She loves him, he said quietly. Or she thinks she does. Emily didn't respond for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what's the most dangerous thing about people like Wells? They give hope. Real, tangible hope. And then they twist it into loyalty." 2 weeks later, Laura received a formal job offer. Assistant coordinator, patient outreach and scheduling, paid hourly, full access to clinic systems, directly under Wells. She brought the offer home in a neat white folder. "I'm thinking of saying yes," she said. "It's part-time at first, but it could grow into something real. I need to feel useful again." Nicholas said nothing. Laura touched his arm. "I don't want to fight." "Then don't," he said quietly. "Are you upset?" "Should I be?" She hesitated. "It's just work." "Right." She pulled her hand away. "You've been distant lately." Nicholas looked at her. "Have I?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. A quiet beat passed. Then she stood, folder in hand, and left the room. Nicholas stared after her, wishing he could go back to the moment before she got sick, before he made that call, before everything unspooled. One night, he stayed late at the garage, nursing a busted alternator that no one had paid him to fix. He couldn't stand going home yet, not while she was there, not while she was texting someone else under the sheets. Manny stopped by to grab tools. "Man, you look like shit," he said. Nicholas gave a half smile. "Thanks." "You hear about that clinic job?" Laura told Cassie. Cassie was Manny's girlfriend. Laura had met her once, briefly. Nicholas blinked. "Yeah, I heard." "She's lucky," Manny said. "Wells is kind of a legend. Got that savior complex, but he's charming as hell." Nicholas wiped his hands on a rag. "Yeah, real charming." The next day, Laura didn't come home until after 9. Nicholas was at the kitchen table, unread mail spread before him. She walked in with a bag of takeout and a story about a last-minute scheduling emergency. She was full of details. Too many. He nodded, not believing a word. Later, she slipped into bed beside him. "Are we okay?" she asked in the dark. He didn't answer. She turned to face the wall. In the morning, he found her gone again. No note, no explanation. Just silence and the faint scent of lavender shampoo in the bathroom. Nicholas sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the place where she used to sleep curled against him. A place now cold and hollow. He reached for his phone and dialed Emily. "I think it's happening," he said when she answered. "I'm sorry." "I don't even blame her," he admitted. "I gave her everything, but maybe I lost her the moment I started lying." Emily paused. "It wasn't the lie. It was the silence after." No note, no call, no final fight. Just a half-empty closet, a drawer left open, and the quiet resignation of absence. Nicholas stood in the middle of their bedroom, staring at the vacant space where her suitcase used to be. The air felt stale, as if the apartment itself held its breath, unsure whether to collapse or remain frozen in her shape. His phone vibrated. "Laura, I need space. Please don't call." He sat down. Then, slowly, placed the phone face down. That night, Nicholas didn't sleep. He walked the apartment like a ghost. Her shoes were still by the door. A coffee mug with faded lipstick stood abandoned in the sink. Her scent lingered on the sheets. It was as if her body had vanished, but the residue of her life refused to leave. In the morning, he forced himself to work. At the garage, his hands trembled with fatigue. He stripped a bolt and dropped a wrench on his foot. Manny watched him with growing concern. "You okay, man?" Nicholas nodded without looking up. "Fine." But nothing was fine. His body ached in ways he had never known. The donated kidney had been sold in a place with no follow-up care, and now the lack of rest, proper diet, and emotional collapse were catching up. Every day felt heavier, like he was dragging his bones through wet concrete. The world kept moving. Laura had moved on. A week passed before he saw her again. It happened by accident. He had stopped by a pharmacy to pick up pain meds when he spotted her across the street, stepping into Wells's car. She wore a navy blue blazer and heels, her hair in a loose knot, laughing as the doctor opened the door for her like a date, not a boss. Nicholas stood frozen. He wanted to cross the street, to shout, to beg, but instead, he turned around and walked the other way. That night, he called Emily. "He has her," he said. Emily was quiet for a long moment. "Come in tomorrow. Let's talk." They met at a diner near the edge of the city. Emily wore scrubs under a faded hoodie, her hair in a braid, her eyes tired but sharp. "He isolates them," she said, pouring sugar into her coffee. "It's part of his pattern. I've seen it before." "You mean this has happened with others?" Emily nodded. "Not always romantically. But he picks the vulnerable ones, the ones who feel they owe him everything. He builds them up, makes them feel safe, then wraps himself around their lives until they can't breathe without him." Nicholas stared at his untouched plate. "She was recovering," he said. "She was still weak. I should have—" "You saved her life, Nick. You did more than anyone." "I lied to her. You protected her. There's a difference." Emily told him stories. A young receptionist who quit suddenly, no explanation. A nurse practitioner who transferred to another state after rumors surfaced. None of them filed reports. None of them left evidence. Dr. Jonathan Wells was careful, precise, and beloved by the hospital board. "No one wants to believe the man who saves lives might ruin them too," she said. Nicholas leaned back. "So what? I expose him? Take him down?" She shook her head. "Not unless you want your life to burn with his. He has lawyers, friends in high places, people who depend on his reputation." "I don't care about that. I just want her to see the truth." Emily hesitated. "Then show her who he really is." The opportunity came a few days later. Nicholas received a call from a former patient, Allison Marsh. She had met him months ago, when he sat with Laura during dialysis. Now, by coincidence, she was in the same clinic, under Wells's care. She remembered Nicholas because of his calm, his loyalty. "I didn't know who else to call," she said. "Something's off about him, the way he talks, the things he says when no one's listening." Nicholas asked her to meet him. She brought a notebook, handwritten entries, conversations, observations. She'd been documenting things for weeks, unsure why, until now. Together they compiled a timeline, comments that crossed the line, moments that blurred ethics. Nothing criminal, yet, but enough to paint a pattern. Emily agreed to help. "He's careful," she said. "But if we show Laura this, maybe she'll finally understand." Nicholas hesitated. "She might hate me." "She already left you. What more is there to lose?" He texted Laura. "Nicholas, please, one coffee. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just truth." Hours passed, then a reply. "Laura, tomorrow, 1 hour." They met at a small cafe near downtown. She looked sharper now, makeup perfect, posture tight, her eyes wary but not cruel. Nicholas brought nothing but a folder. He slid it across the table. "What's this?" "Something I should have given you earlier." She opened it, read. Her face changed. Disbelief, disgust, fear. "These are lies," she said. "Allison kept notes. Emily verified some of it. I didn't come to blame you, Laura. I just want you to see." She closed the folder, breathing hard. "I trusted him," she said. Her voice cracked. Nicholas reached for her hand but stopped himself. "I did too," he said. Laura didn't respond right away. Her fingers trembled as they rested on the closed folder. The cafe around them buzzed with idle chatter and the clink of mugs, but the space between her and Nicholas felt quiet, heavy, sealed off from the rest of the world. "I don't know what to think," she said finally. Her voice was low, like she was speaking more to herself than to him. "You don't have to believe everything," Nicholas replied. "Just ask yourself why none of it surprises you." She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "You waited until now to tell me all this. Why?" He paused. "Because I didn't want to be the guy who tore down the man who saved you." Laura looked away. "But you did." "No, he did." The conversation ended without resolution. Laura left the cafe without taking the folder, but she didn't leave it behind either. She clutched it to her chest like something radioactive, dangerous, but impossible to ignore. Nicholas watched her go. He didn't feel victory, only a strange, empty ache. The following week passed in silence. No calls, No messages. Nicholas returned to the garage. His body moved through the motions, but his mind was elsewhere. His coworkers kept their distance. He was becoming a ghost in his own life. Emily checked in once, but there was nothing new to say. Until Thursday night. Laura showed up at his apartment. She looked different. No makeup, hair tied back, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. She stood in the doorway, folder still in hand. "I read everything," she said. Nicholas stepped aside, letting her in. They sat without speaking for a long time. Then she said, "I confronted him." Nicholas straightened. "What did he say?" "He didn't deny it. Not exactly. He just twisted it. Said you were bitter, obsessed. Said you manipulated me." "And you believed him?" Laura shook her head slowly. "Not this time." She set the folder on the table. "I thought he was the one who saved me," she whispered. "But it wasn't him. It was you. And I left you bleeding for it." Nicholas swallowed hard. "I didn't tell you about the kidney because I didn't want your gratitude," he said. "I just wanted you to live." Laura looked down at her hands. "I don't know if I can ever fix what I broke." "You don't have to," he said quietly. "Just don't go back to him." "I won't." Laura quit the clinic 2 days later. She didn't give a reason. Just walked out, left her badge on the desk, and turned off her phone. Wells didn't chase her. He didn't have to. The clinic had its own protocols. His charm still shielded him. No formal complaints, no scandals. He remained untouched, but the cracks had started to show. Word spread quietly. Emily noticed the shift. Nurses spoke in whispers. 2 other women reached out to her anonymously. No one wanted to go public, but no one was loyal anymore either. The image of Dr. Jonathan Wells had begun to fray. Laura moved into a small rental on the other side of the city, not with Nicholas. She said she needed space, to rebuild, to think, to understand who she was outside of hospitals and men who tried to own her pain. Nicholas respected that. They stayed in touch, not daily, not romantically, just honestly. It was more than they had had in months. Nicholas's own healing was slow. His body still fought the damage, the fatigue, the internal imbalance. But something inside him shifted. A quiet resilience returned, this time not built on sacrifice, but on clarity. Emily remained his friend, his support. Some evenings they shared dinner, laughter, silence. Nothing was defined, nothing rushed. She knew his pain, he knew hers, and that was enough. One afternoon, Emily handed him an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "A contact," she said. "A journalist, discreet, investigative. You don't need to talk to them. But if you ever want to make sure Wells doesn't hurt anyone else." Nicholas held the envelope for a moment, then slid it into his coat pocket. "Not yet," he said, "but maybe one day." A week later, Laura stopped by unannounced. She looked stronger. Not healed, not whole, but awake. They sat on the same couch where she had once collapsed after her surgery, and for a while said nothing. Then she said, "I'm sorry." Nicholas didn't ask for what. "I wasn't running to him," she said. "I was running from myself, from dying, from needing someone. He just made it easier." "I know." She reached for his hand, just briefly. "Whatever happens," she said, "you should know. I'm grateful. Not just for the kidney, for still seeing me, even when I was gone." Nicholas nodded. "I never stopped." Autumn arrived slowly in Houston, dragging cooler nights behind it. The air felt lighter. Nicholas noticed things again. The color of the sky at dusk, the sound of wind against the garage door, the quiet rhythm of life. It was the kind of peace that didn't come from joy, but from exhaustion, earned stillness. He wasn't healed, not completely, but he was no longer bleeding. The scar beneath his ribs remained, a thin line of skin that ached in the cold, a reminder, a wound that would never fully vanish, but it no longer defined him. It simply told the truth. One Tuesday evening, he met Emily at a quiet bar near the outskirts of town. She wore a leather jacket and an easy smile. They didn't talk about the clinic or Wells or Laura, not at first. Instead, they talked about music, strange customers, a patient who named her IV stand Steve. Eventually, Emily leaned over the table. "You know, for what it's worth, you did more than most ever would." Nicholas looked down at his drink. Doesn't feel like enough. It's not about enough. It's about choosing to love someone even when it costs you everything. He met her gaze. Would you do it? Emily didn't hesitate. In the right moment? For the right person? Yeah. They sat in silence for a while. It wasn't awkward. It felt like safety. Nicholas still kept the envelope Emily had given him, the contact, the journalist. Sometimes he opened the drawer, touched the edges, and wondered. But for now, Wells was quiet. The charm that once protected him had dulled. Staff avoided him. Patience transferred away. His kingdom was shrinking. It wasn't justice, but it was a beginning. A month later, Laura came by. She had cut her hair shorter, wore no makeup. She looked healthier, lighter. She handed him a small box. He opened it. Inside was a keychain, a miniature silver wrench, simple and worn. It reminded me of you, she said. Fixing things. He smiled. I can't fix everything, he said. No, she agreed. But you fix what matters. They talked for a while. No tension, no ghosts. Just two people who had passed through a storm and lived to see the wreckage. When she stood to leave, she hugged him. Not out of guilt, out of respect, out of truth. That night, Nicholas stood by his window, staring out at the streetlights blinking through the trees. The city was loud, but his apartment was quiet. He thought of Laura, of the moment she left, the moment she returned, the in-between. He thought of Wells, of the soft clinical destruction wrapped in white coats and practiced smiles. He thought of Emily, her steadiness, her anger, her compassion. And he thought of himself, a man who gave away part of his body to save someone else's life. A man who lost more than he could name, and still stood. In the mirror, the scar remained. A single line across the flesh, faded but visible. He touched it, then turned away. Outside, the wind moved through the branches. Inside, Nicholas picked up a notebook and began to write. Not for anyone else, not for the world, but for himself. Not a confession, not a complaint, just the truth.